Corla. Just to, I suppose, wish you a happy Christmas, and the Laskin Corla, or the Count Corla, and all the staff and management in the convention centre and the Dáil itself, and also to wish the Minister a happy Christmas. And also, if I could take this opportunity just to wish, as a dub, to wish the Dublin men's and women's team luck at the weekend. Hope for...
the clock is running.
Yeah. So just to acknowledge the huge credit that must go to the GA, who have managed to organise a championship in a year when there have been so many challenges. There are over 60 recognised sports national governing bodies under the umbrella of Sports Ireland who all have elite athletes. A lot of these sports have contacted me expressing the concerns that they cannot compete while the GA has been able to play matches. The Olympics are coming next year, and many of those who will be competing are not able to play and compete, and it's undoubtedly going to impact their preparations for Tokyo next year. Basketball, tennis, athletics, hockey, rugby, all these sports and more feel, and I'll use their words, feel they're being shafted. It should not come down to who is the best at lobbying. It should come down, it should be decided on science, and the decisions should be determined by scientific evidence. The GA is a great organisation, and it has done wonderful work on so many levels. Community level, mental health, and of course sports itself. But there is a real sense, among other sports, that GA is getting preferential treatment. As the Olympian Rob Heffernan recently highlighted, he recently highlighted 4 athletes who are going to the Olympics next year. Yet the government does not consider them elite enough to compete in Ireland in world-class facilities we have here. How can the government state that Olympians are not elite and therefore can't compete? Remember, athletics competitions are outdoors, are non-contact, and yet this is not allowed go ahead at an elite level. All sports must be treated equally, and the government needs to widen its definition of what is elite. Athletic events are being run on this island in the north and throughout Europe. Athletes have been travelling throughout Europe and the world to compete. Few, if any, have become sick. Sport Ireland, however, have given a directive where they do not want people travelling, but they're not offering and ensuring that there's competition and challenges for them here, available here. We need to cater for our Olympic athletes at home and not force them abroad. And I understand that the Sport Ireland have issued a decree that any athletes that travel abroad will be penalised. And I think this is really unfair. And a recent survey carried out by the Japanese Athletes Federation, where 571,000 athletes and 98,000 officials and staff took part in 787 races and track meetings from July 1st to October 4th, resulting in only one single case of someone involved contracting COVID-19 in the 2 weeks following. An athletics event can be done with less than 50 people at a facility at any one time and provide qualification opportunity. These are skilled people who conduct these events on the road, track and indoor tracks. This just requires approval from Sport Ireland. An event can be done simply and provide opportunity for athletes to qualify for international competition. I leave it the final words to Phelim Kelly. If the GA are allowed 30 players on the pitch, you could easily have a race on the road with 30 people. Or if you took the top 20 men and women based on times and have a cross-country race.
Thank you, Deputy.
This is not about athletics versus GA, but the best athletes in any group, in my group, are on that elite level.
It's about being over time, Deputy. Thank you. Thank you, Minister.
Gurmagat Lascan Corla, and I'd like to echo the words of Deputy Andrews and wish everyone and all of everyone who works in the House of the Oireachtas a happy Christmas and a peaceful New Year. And in my other role as Chief Whip, I've seen the dedicated public service of everyone in the House of the Oireachtas and all the effort from everyone who works here about making our national parliament operate in a really difficult COVID time. So just want to acknowledge that and hope everyone gets a break. And like yourself, Deputy, I looking forward to the All Ireland finals on Saturday and Sunday, and we'll all be excited about it. And I said a split house myself, with both my parents being from Mayo, so we're looking forward to that as well, and also Dublin Ladies on Sunday. But to go to your question, the government through Sport Ireland are providing every support for our Olympic and Paralympic athletes as they prepare for the Tokyo Games next summer. Sport Ireland has given assurance to athletes in the international carding scheme that their funding support will be rolled over into 2021. We've also assured the sporting bodies that funding for high performance programmes will also be maintained at the same level. The expert group on return to sport has provided specific guidance for high performance programmes to facilitate a return to training for athletes since last June. Specific guidance has also been developed in relation to international travel. While the COVID-19 pandemic regrettably led to the cancellation of many international events, we are heartened to see Irish athletes win 13 medals in major international competition during 2020. The athletes and teams preparing for Tokyo 2021 are currently exempted from public health restrictions on sports, training and events. The athletes are continuing to train at Sport Ireland campus and other training centres throughout the country. Sport Ireland are also supporting the sporting bodies to organise competitive events for their elite athletes, including the Swim Ireland Irish Winter Meet currently underway at the National Aquatic Centre, for example. Sport Ireland will continue to work with the Olympic Federation of Ireland, Paralympics Ireland and the performance directors and the national governing bodies of sport to prepare Team Ireland for the Games, and I can assure the Deputy that the Government will provide the athletes with all the support they need to achieve their performance targets in Tokyo. The Government recognises the importance of a broader resumption of sport at the earliest possible date for all people, but especially children and young people who have been hit so hard by the pandemic. Sporting organisations, facilities and sports clubs countrywide have had to either cease or greatly curtail their activities since the middle of March. The position differs from sport to sport depending upon, for example, either their season or whether they are indoor or outdoor sports. The Government fully understands the difficulties that such restrictions have caused. It is, however, the case that those restrictions have been necessary in so many examples to deal with the threat of COVID-19 as it's presented itself. It is important to recall that the Government's Resilience and Recovery Plan does not permit sporting competitions and events to be held in levels 3, 4 and 5, save for the limited number of exemptions which I've outlined, and these principally apply for professional and high-performance sport. And I would like to emphasise that this applies to a very small group of athletes and a limited number of competitions and events that are taking place. In each case, these events are subject to strict compliance with detailed protocols to minimise the risk of disease transmission. Under the current Level 3 restrictions, the Government has decided that a small number of underage FAI National Underage Leagues for young women and men will be permitted to conclude their seasons. My department has been assured by the FAI that the protocols and control measures applied for training and matches for these teams are equivalent to those applied for the senior teams. My department is also satisfied that robust compliance structures are in place to ensure adherence to these protocols. And I might go into further detail, Laskin Corla, we have written to, just to be helpful, Deputy, to all the national governing bodies about trying to tailor specific solutions relative to their sport in the context of Level 3. And we recognise that the broader resumption of sport will require tailored solutions for different sports, depending on the risk and ensuring we mitigate the impact of COVID as well. But I'll go into further detail in my further reply.
If we skip the Christmas greetings for a while, we might have the time. Deputy Andrews, 2 minutes.
You're sounding a bit like the Grinch now.
I might just, maybe it's the late hour of the evening.
I know, but that's true too.
I'm watching the clock.
Thanks.
Staff are anxious to go home.
Just to thank the Minister for that response. I suppose if the Minister could clarify, because certain athletes have indicated to me that Sport Ireland have issued a decree that if certain athletes travel abroad to get into competition which they need in preparation for the Olympics next year, they'll be penalised and some of their funding will be withdrawn. Can you clarify that is not the case? And I suppose when you look at it from an Olympian's perspective, and Rob Heffernan highlighted some athletes who are looking to to compete next year, who will be competing hopefully next year in the Olympics, and they see that they can't compete in their own country with really good facilities, and yet you have them looking on, these elite athletes looking on at 17-year-olds and 19-year-olds who are able to play a contact sport, and they're excluded from that, and it does seem unfair, and I think it's something that does need to be addressed and should be addressed as a matter of urgency. And I think if more of the sports were included in the, like you said, you mentioned about the engagement with the governing bodies, but I think that there needs to be, all governing bodies need to be involved, and not just a number of, like the big three, the GAA, the football and the rugby, because I think it's important that everybody is involved in it, and like I say, all the sports are treated equally. Thanks.
Deputy Minister.
Thanks, Deputy. And just to say that specific guidance, as I said in my initial reply, has been developed in relation to international travel. And I referenced a number of the medals that our international athletes have won, and that we're doing everything to support our athletes who are going to Tokyo. And I recognise and accept that the current restricted regime is a great disappointment for many sports, that they're limited at the present time. And just to be clear, I haven't written to any big anything or any big three. Every national governing body who engage with Sport Ireland have all been written to, each and every one of them, small, big and medium-sized. So we want to hear from them all about tailoring solutions, about the broader return to sport and competition, and I think that's the appropriate thing to do, so that we can try and maximise the return to sport whilst also recognising the risk. And we have seen, for example, we have a number of written submissions are being made to look at all the available evidence and data for the purpose of informing the development of tailored proposals and approaches for future mitigation measures. And it is my objective that such submissions would enable the Government to review and adapt the suite of public health measures currently applying to sport and exercise activities. And I anticipate that the issue of resuming competitions and leagues will form part of that review also. The challenge of ensuring the most effective possible preparation for the rescheduled Tokyo Games is a key dimension in this as well, but also looking beyond the Tokyo Games and our athletes that will be hopefully there competing in the Olympics in 4 years' time as well. So that our pathway athletes who we want to see funded and supported, and seeing them continue to train and participate in this period, but also the athletes who are all the people and young people across our communities who want to get back to some degree of competition, and I know that many of them are currently training. We want to try and tailor proposals to do what we can with sport in the context of the public health pandemic, but also looking at the comparative European and international picture for sport and using that data so that we can maximise the return to sport. And that's what I'm anxious to deliver, and I'm happy to work with you on that.